Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a Monday night edition of Sir Hunt on X, live from Cincinnati, Ohio, here in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 17th of February 2025 and a wonderful 3-day weekend. The temperatures just started to really get to the chilly side over here in Cincinnati. You see, I got this thing all fired up. Nice, warm, and cozy addition to my show tonight. Lots of things to touch on. I know parts of the state, especially those in the States, are real cold and frigid right now. And I hope you guys are finding ways to stay indoors and stay warm in the midst of all of this cold weather, because it's going to be this way probably for the next few days, because it's supposed to drop to single digits here in Cincinnati by midweek. And this thing's going to be cooking all week long. And I will be staying nice and warm throughout most of it. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful weekend. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful day today. So get right down to it. Of course, last night was the NBA All-Star Game. And of course, the big story is always, since he wants to throw himself in the news all the time, it is LeBron James. And he decided to, like last minute, say that he had foot discomfort and decided to back out of the All-Star Game. We knew he had a plan all along. We knew this was a plan. He didn't have any foot discomfort, because if he had foot discomfort, he wouldn't have done this like minutes before the game. He did this because he knows that the spotlight in the NBA is shifting away from him, shifting to other pieces and other standout players like Wemby of San Antonio, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of Oklahoma City, Jaylen Brown of Boston, of course, guys like Nikola Jokic and his teammate Luka Doncic, and the list goes on. We know why he did it. He's just a narcissist who craves attention. He knows the spotlight is going away from him. Everybody's seen his act over the last several years, who he is, what he's made of. He knows what it's all about. And that's why the NBA, that's why he decided to do what he decided to do last night. And the fact that NBA decided to do nothing to him or anything about it speaks to the volumes of who the league and what LeBron James and Adam Silver are. Just a bunch of crooked cowards who doesn't care about the consumer and the ratings of the product. Everybody knows that there are more worthy players who are watching him these days, which is basically everybody on that all-star rosters over here. And days before, had he forfeited a spot, somebody would have taken it. He wanted to keep that spot to keep a more deserving player than him out of it. That's why he pulled what he pulled last night. I mean, there was no real foot discomfort. There's no ankle discomfort. He just did it because he knows that everybody is on that team. People wanted to see players on both the all-star squads more than him. He decided to take one last shot at it and become a narcissist to seek attention. And that's what it was at the end of the day. So that's what LeBron James did last night. I don't use this platform to talk about him much. I mean, phenomenal player. But outside of just being a phenomenal player, the guy's just a despicable act. And he basically showed it again last night when he did what he did. Just inexcusable. And speaking of standout NBA talents, maybe the greatest to ever lace him up turned 62 today. So it's such the legacy of number 23, the real number 23. That was the guy that donned it in the Chicago Bull red and black uni. They're talking about the greatest, Michael Jordan. I could point to a million things as to why the guy's the greatest, or at least so-called to everybody's opinion. The commercials, the career accolades, the 6-0 finals record, the dunk contests, the miraculous plays, his scoring titles, his ability to do whatever. But maybe he's one of those guys. When he stands on the court, you know who Michael Jordan was. His impact, I can't even put into words. I don't think anyone who's seen him live in person, especially who saw his games at the old Chicago Stadium in the early 90s when he really rose to prominence during the Chicago Bulls' first three-peat. And because the guy was just off-the-chain sensational. Of course, there's the Gatorade commercials. There's the Like Mike, the two-time Olympic gold medalist, where especially part of the Dream Team, where he was the leader of the Dream Team and just led him all the way to the gold medal and basically a wipeout from start to finish. But it is his 63rd birthday today, and the legacy, his impact. I mean, he's still big with the shoes, obviously. Still, he had his name in video game montages, of course. Back in the 80s, it was Jordan versus Bird. Of course, that was a spinoff of what he did at Boston Garden in 1986 when he dropped 63 on the Celtics' head, the 86 Celtics who went on to win the title. Of course, it prompted Larry Bird to say, "I thought I saw God enter the building." But Michael Jordan's legacy is one of those ones that's probably going to live forever and ever and ever. I mean, you can pull up all the highlight reels you want. You can pull up all the articles about him you want. You can pull up all the interviews about him you want. Doesn't defy his legacy justice. I mean, when you think of the two words like Mike, because there was a boatload of commercials during Mike's peak when he was ascending to the premier, not just the premier player in the NBA, the premier athlete globally. You talk about a globalized icon, second to none for his time. It's just indescribable, just the legacy and the impact the great Michael Jordan had. And today, happy 63rd birthday to the real GOAT of them all, the great Michael Jordan. His legacy still lives on. There's always going to be people doing this famous air reverse like he did in Game 2 of the 91 finals against the Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, the famous shrug after he dropped 35 on Portland in Game 1 of the 92 finals where he had 6 threes. The image, of course, when he was crying in the locker room on Father's Day after the 96 Bulls beat Seattle to win the title. The image still of him on the floor grabbing onto a basketball. And, of course, the pose in 98 to end the 6th championship run in 8 years when they beat Utah. The list goes on and on and on. You know, you can love him. You can hate him. You can say what you want, positive, negative, whatever. His impact will be always everlasting. And that's why we universally recognized as the greatest. You know, of course, the documentary, The Last Dance, broke a lot of people because Michael Jordan just showed in that documentary why he was the greatest. And a bunch of people left and right just couldn't take it. But it didn't matter because no one was winning on Michael Jordan's watch for that 6-year period from 91 to 98. The only thing he did wrong, of course, was the gambling shebang where he retired or whatever you want to call it from the 2-year period. But it still doesn't take away the fact the guy's impact was just second to none. Happy 63rd birthday to the greatest of all time. That's the greatest, Michael Jordan. I mean, I can go on and on about his legacy if I want to, which, you know, everybody can, especially the basketball aficionados. You know, stat sheets don't do this guy justice. Highlight reels don't do this guy justice. I mean, even the everything that's going on, the Jordan brand shoes. I mean, he even had the Jordan brand. He had famous athletes like Derek Jeter and Roy Jones Jr. as a part of it at one point. The Jordan brand will live forever and ever and ever. The impact, second to none. And it started with when this guy came into the court in the NBA when he was drafted 3rd overall in the 1984 draft. So happy birthday to the greatest, Michael Jordan. And of course, when you talk about the NBA, of course, this year is the final year of the standout program that spanned, I believe, a summer area of nearly 4 decades. The NBA on TNT. Watched the tribute video earlier today, and I still can't wrap my hands around it. I mean, I grew up when the NBA on TNT was the premier basketball or sports show you had on cable TV. We're not talking about the NBA and NBC because you could get that with, you know, the antennas and with 88 layers of bunny ears, and the bunny ears wrapped in aluminum oil. Let me back up. Those bunny ears with 88 layers of aluminum foil wrapped around it, and you can watch NBA and NBC on that one. We're talking about NBA on TNT when cable and satellite started to evolve and become the mainstay in all of the households. And what was the main program on it in the sports world, especially from the basketball point of view? The NBA on TNT. I mean, they had Ernie Johnson doing the hosts for the longest time. You had, of course, the late Craig Sager doing sideline reporting and all of the crazy suits and outfits. Guys like Bob Neal, Pete Van Wieren, Gary Bender calling games with standout analysts like Hubie Brown, Doug Collins, Jack Gibbons, just to name several of them. And whenever the NBA on TNT was on, you were looking for your remote and you were looking for that channel, especially if you was not just a pure basketball fan, but a pure sports fan. And I know some of that program hasn't been the greatest the last several years, but it has to do with the fact that basketball is just a depleted product these days. But for 4 decades, I always said, for 4 decades, the premier basketball channel that you wanted to watch was always the NBA on TNT. I mean, unbiased analysts, unbiased commentary. I mean, they had it set up perfectly. We had the best playing the best, and they would do their own flex scheduling at times, especially when it comes closer to the playoffs. And of course, when we got closer to the playoff time, you would have like players and coaches joining Ernie Johnson in the interview room and give an in-depth analysis at the highest level imaginable, simply because that was what the NBA and TNT was all about. It's going to be weird next season. Now, I don't watch it like I used to find out that, of all the NBA television streaming or whatever, there's not going to be any kind of NBA on TNT next season. It's going to be weird, especially for a guy like myself who grew up as Turner Sports when it started to evolve and become basically all across cable television, not just with the NBA and TNT, all kinds of Turner Sports. I mean, they had, of course, Braves baseball way back in the day when especially in the early 90s when they had that vicious pitching staff of guys like Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz. I mean, Turner Sports had that all the time. Of course, in the mid-90s when the entertainment world started to have the Monday Night Wars with wrestling that bought WCW. And of course, for about an 83-week period, it was a number one watch show in all of television. It was on Turner Sports. And all that, they still had the NBA playoffs. But to have nothing on the Turner networks after this season, in terms of related to sports, it's going to be the most mind-blowing thing I've ever encountered in the years I've watched, followed, and covered sports. Because Turner Sports was, when it grew, I mean, it grew and it grew big. I mean, it had some of the most, especially in basketball, some of the most landmark telling moments ever. Maybe the biggest one I can think of. I can point to a lot of them, but maybe the first one goes back to when they had the Game 5 of the Eastern Conference playoff series between Detroit and Boston, where Isaiah Thomas throws a lazy pass, Larry Bird intercepts it, finds Dennis Johnson for the game-winning layup. I mean, it was moments like that where when you watch Turner Sports, you live for as a fan, and those who worked for Turner Sports live for when they were calling the game or watching it as a camera producer, because TNT was the premier network for all sports, TNT, TBS, among many others. Of course, it evolved to college sports in recent years with the CBS, part of a joint venture with Bracket Sundays. But after this year, it's going to be weird not having any kind of sports on Turner networks anymore, because it's going to be the weirdest thing I've ever been a part of. Good luck with the new NBA contract, because I said all along, it's a bad contract, and you guys are going to regret it, especially not having TNT on there. Yeah, I don't talk NBA much, but I'll go ahead and talk tonight because I got a chance to explore my horizons a little bit. Of course, tomorrow is the supposed official day of the NFL franchise tag designations, or so be. Then again, the source is Kelsey Conway, who's the biggest coward out of Cincinnati, so I'm not giving her the time of day. Of course, the rumors run around rampant all day today. That is released by a bunch of more gurus in Cincinnati, but the most reliable are Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport, who said the Bengals are going to tag Tee Higgins. It was the expectation. I mean, if you didn't expect Tee Higgins to be tagged, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, he did it last year. They did this year. They're going to put the non-exclusive tag or whatever the hell they want to call it, simply because, it's basically their way of saying you can negotiate, but you're going to give us something, which is a smart business move by the Bengals. Probably the first I've seen it maybe forever, because the Bengals now can work their own deal, or if they can't work their own deal, they can basically tell the teams, you can work and negotiate with Tee Higgins, but you're going to give us something in return. I mean, they're not letting Tee Higgins walk for basically nothing. I mean, there's some wild things that goes on with the franchise tag and the negotiation with. They say it's supposed to be 2 first-round draft picks they could get back if they don't match. which I think it's just stupid overpaying. I don't think anybody could be that stupid. But I don't know where this is going to go. He's going to get his money, and we're going to find out where he's going to get attacked. Because one thing I do not expect, I don't expect Tee Higgins to play on a second-year single-season tag because he did it once. He bet on himself once. I'd be surprised if he bets on himself twice. The only thing that happens, he plays with the Bengals on a new contract, or he plays on somebody else for a new contract, and that team's forking out compensation to the Bengals. Because I'd be shocked if Tee Higgins goes that route again, which raises a lot of questions. Which I said they should have given him a 2 to 3 year deal, knowing they would have done this after the 2022 AFC title game to loss of Kansas City. Or if they want to do that, they should have done with him what Kansas wound up doing with Tyreek Hill, finding a team, negotiating a deal, getting draft compensation in return. Maybe it's better late than never, but I thought the Bengals dropped the ball in that regard because they should have been able to either had something done with him or had some draft compensation in return, which goes to show you why the Bengals front office is so far behind the 8 ball that they don't know how to see the 8 ball out of a rearview mirror. Actually, the 8 ball can't see them. It's more like it because that's how the Bengals organization works and operates. Interesting to see where this one's going to go. Everyone's making their weird assumptions here in Cincinnati. Of course, we have cowards like Chris Rowling, James Rapian, Kay Adams, Kelsey Conway spilling weird rumors that they know it all when they really don't. Let's just everyone chill and let the offseason play out because it hasn't even started yet. And we have Bengal cowards all over the place with their panties all up in a bunch. I'll wait to see how this one plays out because this is going to go a lot of places, I'm sure. Again, I thought they should have handled the situation better instead of having to go franchise tag, done a 2-year deal so we have to go through this off season of financial drama. But this is what it brings up. And we're going to have another off season of Bengals fans carrying themselves like morons, biting their fingernails, having their panties all up in a bunch over stupid stuff. So that takes care of the NFL offseason talk for beginners. I'll divulge more once this offseason starts to begin. It's going to be the franchise tags. I don't know who's getting tagged. I don't know who's getting traded. We know the rumor mill is going to spill all over the place, but I'm not going to be like a lot of these fans all over the place. I'm just going to sit back and let things play out because you're going to hear things from everybody, everywhere, and I'm not going to get caught up into it or be a prisoner of the moment. Everybody needs to chill. Now to what took place over the weekend in the sport of boxing. It was, of course, Madison Square Garden, where a star was born, and it goes by the name of Keyshawn Davis. The impressive performance when he won a belt over Denis Berinchyk with a 4th-round obliteration. Perfectly placed left hook to the body, floored him in the 3rd. Same one, put him down and out for the count in the 4th. Keyshawn Davis just it right now. I mean, what can you say? I mean, he joins the other belt holders like fighters like Tank Davis, Vasily Lomachenko, and Shakur Stevenson. Of course, he wants all the smoke. Question is, do they want him? Now, of course, there's the question whether he's going to stay at 135 because I thought he looked like a welterweight going into this fight Saturday night when I did a watch along with a couple people from overseas. So I don't know how long he stays at 135, but either way, it was a standout performance. I expect him to defend the title at least once or twice before venturing into, bigger avenues. The guy he wants is Tank Davis, which, that's the only fight that makes sense. Problem is Tank Davis doesn't have the balls to fight him. So we'll see where that one goes. But how can you not be impressed with what Keyshawn Davis did Saturday night? If you weren't impressed, you're not a fight fan. I'm sorry, you're not, because Keyshawn Davis just stole New York City, basically talked a lot of talk, backed it up, put a durable, tough, undefeated champion of Berinchyk down and out for the count, and the fight was over. Congratulations to Keyshawn Davis for winning a belt. And what took place 55 years ago today, speaking of guys that made coming out parties at Madison Square Garden, one of the preeminent heavyweights of all time, made his splash. That happens to be Philadelphia's old Smoking Joe Frazier, because it was 55 years ago when he just blasted Jimmy Ellis to win up to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Ellis had a belt. The other belt was vacated or stripped from Muhammad Ali for reasons, and I've been redundant. You guys know what they are. I will not use my platform for it. You guys can use yours. But this was a moment Joe Frazier worked for, got it, made the most of it, and just made light work out of Jimmy Ellis, who tried to talk up a storm going into this fight with probably the premier left hooker maybe the heavyweight division has ever seen. And at the end of the fourth round, it was a left hook that basically just ended matters, where Angelo Dundee, who trained Jimmy Ellis, threw in the towel to save Jimmy Ellis because he got the beating of his life. And Joe Frazier became the heavyweight champion of the world and ascended himself to a top 10 all-time great heavyweight. He won Jimmy Ellis's belt and basically won the other belt that was vacated after they stripped it from Ali. It was a two-belt era where the two belts, and he became the undisputed champion. That's what happened to Joe Frazier this night. It's symbolic because he worked hard and hard to get to this point. Tried to get Ali a couple times. We know what happened there with the stripping of the belt. And he got this as a consolation, made the most of the opportunity, and just took advantage of it against a Jimmy Ellis who you could probably say was in over his head, even though he won a belt. Couple solid wins, but when he really needed to step up against a guy like Joe Frazier, that was all she wrote. And Angelo Dundee just saved Jimmy Ellis's life that night because Joe Frazier just laid it onto him. The capper was the end of the fourth round where a left hook, and Jimmy Ellis was just not there. And there was Joe Frazier, who was a 1964 Olympic gold medalist, becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And of course, exactly 14 months after that, he finally got his fight, March 8, 1971, against Muhammad Ali. It was widely regarded as the greatest fight ever, at least in the heavyweight division. Historians can tell you all about that one. And of course, down the line, he got his own victim of steamrolling, because after he steamrolled Jimmy Ellis, go to Kingston, Jamaica, January 22, 1973, and George Foreman did the same to him. But Joe Frazier, for the better half of a 2 to 3 year period, brought a lot of excitement, a lot of greatness, a vicious left hook that when he hit you with it, the fight was over. I mean, he floored Ali in the 15th round of the first fight with it. Arguably the greatest left hook in boxing history, the greatest fighter to come out of a deep, rich boxing tradition out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and ascended himself to the top 10 all-time great heavyweight. Excuse me. That was Smoking Joe Frazier. That's why they called him Smoking Joe, because when he got in the ring, he sure the hell wanted to smoke you. And it was 55 years ago today, he smoked Jimmy Ellis. And Jimmy Ellis was a whale of a fighter, a terrific light heavyweight. Didn't get a chance to fight for a light heavyweight title. Fought at heavyweight, won the title. After a couple of title defenses, it was Joe Frazier who basically ended his reign and started his own reign of the heavyweight champion of the world for the better half of, turned out to be 2.5, nearly 3 years. So it was 55 years ago today that happened. We talk about, of course, the all-time great heavyweights. Joe Frazier's definitely up there. I've said this redundantly, and I'll say it again because there's some people in the community who don't get it. Muhammad Ali is number one. A boatload of gaps at number 2 is Joe Louis. A boatload of gaps, 3 through 10 is the field. You guys have at it. Jack Johnson, Larry Holmes, Lennox Lewis, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Evander Holyfield, Jack Dempsey, Sonny Liston. You throw Vladimir Klitschko. List goes on and on and on. But the 3 through 10, I don't even get into the ranking system because there's no real set criteria on it. Because outside of 1 and 2, there's no real set criteria. I mean, Ali's the greatest. We know why that is. And I've said on countless occasions, And some people in the boxing community still wanted to disparage the great Joe Louis. You don't go 12 years and successfully defend your title 25 times, just be a nobody. Especially the way he won it when he went to Germany and just pulverized Max Schmeling back in the mid to late 1930s in one of the more historically important fights in the history of culture. I won't use the platform. You guys can look it up. But that was what Joe Louis was. If you talk about all the top 10 great heavyweights in the all-time ranking system, Joe Frazier is certainly up there, because I saw a couple lists where a couple people willfully neglected to put Joe Frazier on there, and that was an insult. I mean, the first guy to beat Muhammad Ali. I mean, let's get that out of the way. I mean, he's lost 4 fights, really 4 losses to 2 guys, Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Okay? He beat everybody else. Fought everyone, beat everyone, ducked no one, was the man. And I've seen people not put him in the top 10 without a valid reason for it, and that's going to require me to talk to you personally, because you don't have a legitimate brain to think adequately when you want to neglect putting Joe Frazier in your top 10. So that's where it is in the all-time great heavyweights. Joe Frazier, in the deep, rich tradition of Philadelphia fighters, number 1 all time. It's not even debatable. Maybe Bernard Hopkins comes close with his long run as a middleweight champion, but he couldn't even hold a candlelight to Joe Frazier either. But it was 55 years ago today, Joe Frazier made his coming out party at the Garden when he just steamrolled heavyweight champion Jimmy Ellis to become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And whether you guys, excuse me, whether you guys like it or not, Joe Frazier is an all-time great. You can't change history. Don't even try it. I don't know what to tell you, because to see lists where people don't have him up there, it's just criminally insane. I don't get it. I mean, someone tell me why it is. Even for those in the recency bias, Joe Frazier is still a top 10 heavyweight. I mean, when you think about the greatest trilogy in boxing history, Ali Frazier, that stands by itself. What can you say? Sometimes these kids crack me up. I have to bring up one of these all-time great nights in revisionist history in terms of coming out parties, to where these kids need to understand what it was that came before even my time. I mean, this fight took place 55 years ago, and I'm 47. Think about that for a minute. Excuse me, my apologies. And on that note, I will wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I apologize. I'm just now starting to get my voice back after battling the flu, but it's getting there little by little. And I hope everyone had themselves a wonderful rest of the 17th of February 2025. I will be back at it tomorrow. But until then, make self-care your number 1 priority in life. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Until then, good night. Take care, and God bless.